Hello crafty friends, I'm Lean from Studio Kato and I'm so happy to be back with another clean and simple card for you guys. This is a very similar layout to a card I made last week or shared last week. I made these on the same day actually. This is a stamp set by Doodles. I love this stamp set. It is so unique. I love the two gardening stamp sets she came out with, and this is called I Dig You. I'm going to do some watercoloring today, so I am stamping this wheelbarrow image onto Canson Montval 200 GSM cardstock, and I am prepping this with an anti-static powder tool. I am stamping it in Versafine Onyx black ink. I always prep my cardstock with anti-static powder, but I usually cut it out of the video because I am very slow at getting that powder out and tucking it away again, because I don't want the powder to get everywhere. But just know that I do always do this, otherwise you don't really get good results with embossing powder. I am embossing this with Clear Gloss Superfine Embossing Powder by Wow, heat setting it as well with the Wow Jewel Speed Heat Tool, and then I can get to watercoloring. Now, just like another card I shared last week for the new release by Doodles, I am going for a more loose watercolor look. I'm not very used to doing this look, so the biggest tip I have for you is use a lot more water than you usually use. More water will take away some of your control over where the color goes, and it will actually create really cool effects, especially if you drop in a couple different shades or colors as well. So for the gray, for the steel parts of the wheelbarrow, I'm also dropping in some browns to get a rusty look or a dirt look, just a garden look, you know. And for the wheelbarrow itself, I am using a couple of different greens to not make that large green space so boring looking. It's an empty space, so it can look quite plain. If you drop in a couple of different shades of green, it livens it up a little bit. Now for the vegetables, I am not doing too many fancy things because these are quite tiny and quite detailed. Except for the eggplant. There is no texture from the stamp on the eggplant, so I am dropping in some texture with the watercolor. Now for the wheelbarrow, I am also taking a very fine brush and drawing in some lines myself. This gives a little bit of a wooden texture or just an aged look to the wheelbarrow. I'm stamping a lovely sentiment from that same stamp set on some pink cardstock with Versamark ink. I'm stamping it twice just to make sure I have a really good impression, because this cardstock is quite absorbent. So even for Versamark ink or anything like that, know your cardstocks, test your inks before you make a project, because embossing ink can sink into the paper if it's weird paper. I used some metallic brass embossing powder by Wow. This has a little bit of a pink sheen to it, so it's perfect for this pink cardstock. And then I am adding I wanted to add some more gold details, but I wanted to use the same gold from the embossing powder. So I am mixing some water with some paint, with some glue, excuse me, and some paint. That's why it's green. My brush wasn't clean. I'm just mixing some glue and some water together to get it a little bit more runny. You can just use straight up glue if you want. But if you just use glue, especially if the details are a little bit bigger, like my dots here are, you are going to have to let it dry just for a little bit before you add your embossing powder. But yes, that is the goal. We are going to add some embossing powder to this glue. Now, there are pens and markers out there that are made for embossing. So you have markers with embossing ink. That works, but they usually dry out really quickly. If you have some glue, a brush, and some water, you don't need those markers. Now I am taking a mostly dry brush and just sitting it in to the glue dots for a little second to sop up some of that excess glue, so it's a little bit drier. And then I can sprinkle on the embossing powder and heat set it as you would with stamped embossed images. Now, the great thing about this panel is that it's die cut with a stitched die, so it has a really fun detail all around the edges, and that definitely makes this card a lot less plain than it normally would look. It's a very, very simple card. It's a sentiment, it's a little bit of gold embossing, and it's colored cardstock and one image. That's it. And I love this formula. I think it works so well. If you have a great color palette, you can really make it shine on cards like this. I used my We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board to fold a matching envelope out of some similar looking cardstock. This is a lot cheaper cardstock than the one I used for my card, so it's perfect for envelopes. I always use my not so great cardstock for my envelopes. I don't care much about the weight. If the envelope isn't sturdy enough, I just put a tiny piece of sturdy cardstock to the front of my card or in front of my card as well when I mail it. But otherwise, I don't care much about the weight of my envelopes. And I do keep them very simple when I decorate them. So I am only going to stamp this other image from the I Dig You stamp set by James Doodles on there. In some Versamark ink as well. I'm stamping it off to the side so it looks like the image continues over the edge of the envelope. And I'm going to use the same embossing powder that I used on my card for this, just so that it all matches nicely. Once that's sprinkled on, I can heat set it, and that is going to finish my card and my envelope. Very, very clean and simple, but it's a formula that always works. Just a plain, gorgeous color cardstock background, one image right in the center, a sentiment underneath it, maybe with some embossing powder. I love embossing powder. You can also use foiling if you want. And if you die cut that cardstock on your background with a stitched detail die, you are going to have a gorgeous subtle frame around your design as well. The only other thing you need to make this shine is some gorgeous color combinations. So that peachy pink or that salmon pink with some very deep saturated green works perfectly for this. If you're having trouble matching colors, check out some color challenges online. Those are great inspiration and they get you out of your comfort zone or out of your coloring rut, because I definitely stick to similar color palettes throughout all of my cards. I hope you liked this card. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would also love it if you check out my clean and simple playlist linked on top of this video for more inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.